So first of all, the climate priorities of the German presidency. I mean, the German presidency is in times of Corona. I will focus here only on the climate priorities. And there's a 20 pages document also with a long list of some nitty-gritty details on the energy system and renewables and energy efficiency and so on. But I just picked here 3 main issues that I think are important. And one of the priorities for the German presidency is to conclude the deliberations on the draft of the European climate law. And the center of this law is really that the European Union wants to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. So this is one aspect of the German presidency. And then they said to increase the nationally determined contribution for 2030. So the increase, they didn't say a number here, it was in June, this document, but at least increasing the NDC, and then also to expand carbon pricing to cover all sectors and introduce a moderate minimum price. And really at the core is currently to increase the target for 2030. And this has developed over time. Actually now it's quite interesting to see that there's really a very strong commitment by the German presidency for 55%. Of course, they cannot push too much because they have the presidency, and as when you have the presidency, you have to moderate the different interests. But what changed over time is that early this year, the German Christian Democrats were quite reluctant to take on a 55% target because they said, well, we first have to adapt in Germany. It was before the Corona crisis, but they said, well, we cannot go faster. But this changed over time and over summer. And one indication is that the German Minister of Economic Affairs, Peter Altmaier, he put the 55% strongly on the table, even stronger, partly stronger than the environmental minister, Svenja Schulze. And that was a strong signal, and he repeated it in August and September. And he's a close buddy of Chancellor Merkel, and he doesn't say anything that would be against her strategy. So I think it's also part of the strategy to take the German Christian Democrats on board of this 55% road. You have certainly followed that the EU Commission with von der Leyen proposes at least 55% reduction based on the impact assessment, and that was endorsed by Chancellor Merkel a few days ago, where she said, yeah, we support the Commission's position on this 55%. The EU Parliament even goes higher with a 60% reduction. And then the question is, Julita mentioned it, just what about the EU Council? I don't expect a final decision taken in the next 2 days, but most probably and hopefully and the December summit is also gets some pressure because on the 12th, so one day after that, on the 12th December, there's the Paris +5 summit. That means the Paris Agreement is 5 years old. There will be a huge summit organized by Boris Johnson and others. And this puts pressure on the EU to show up with a new target for 2030 with a new NDC. So I think the road is towards 55%. And it's also for Merkel a kind of legacy, I think, to get this through, because it's her last term until next summer. So this is about the target, and the question is how to do this, which kind of instruments are needed, and in the impact. So I put here a kind of timeline, and we are here discussing the increased ambition for the 2030 targets. And also in the EU's impact assessment, they analyzed what about the future of the EU emissions trading system. And I think this will be crucial for achieving the targets, and they discussed a few options. So either the ETS, so just covering the electricity and the industry sector, will stay as before, but they also discussed 2 options of integrating additional sectors into the current ETS, so transport and heating sectors into the EU ETS. Aviation is already in there, and the option of developing a second pricing system for the non-ETS system, so for transport and heating. And we will have this in Germany from the beginning of next year onwards. And we have the debate about the revision of the EU Energy Tax Directive that could set kind of minimum prices in the via the energy taxes in the other non-ETS sectors. Finally, ultimately, perhaps not in 2030, but somewhere beyond, I would say, so this is my personal point here, I think we need somehow a uniform carbon price across countries and sectors. And important is also that the money that we get from the ETS or from carbon pricing in general could be used to finance the transition, for example, the Just Transition Fund. So this is about the implementation. And then you asked me to tell you a little bit on the Germany's Coal Commission. It's actually not called, or it wasn't called Coal Commission, but a Commission on Growth, Structural Change and Employment. So that's quite interesting to see the connotation of that. It's really on structural change. And because I learned that Poland wants to have this perhaps as a kind of role model, I will briefly introduce to hear some of the headlines of this commission. So the government appointed more than 30 representatives, and they came from a variety of stakeholder groups. So really from industry, from NGOs, from trade unions, and also different country, so Länder perspective, country perspectives that were put together, and over roughly a year they debated this issue and finally came up with a conclusion, with a consensus on the coal phase out to have a coal phase out by 2038 at latest. And we have now a coal exit law prescribing annual reductions for lignite and hard coal. Two things are important. One is the support for structural change in the region, and that's quite a huge amount. So 40 billion over the course of 20 years, giving aid to the most affected regions of the coal mining regions, will mean, for example, to settle their universities or to have train lines, train access there. So this is really for structural change. Many projects also on hydrogen and so on. And then the other component is that there, with this shutdown schedule for lignite, there will be compensation payments for the lignite providers, and for the hard coal, it's an auctioning system for the phase out. So having said that, you can compare the German phase out in 2038. This is here a figure from the EU Commission, where they analyzed the different national and energy and climate plans. And you see that many other countries are already phasing out in 2030. Of course, similar as Poland, Germany has always been a coal country, so a much longer and later phase out. But actually, when we really go for the higher target, then the phase out will be much earlier. I would say probably in 2030, because of the market mechanisms in the EU ETS, we will probably see an earlier phase out. But the important point is that the structural change has been debated before, and the money has been given to the regions, and so therefore, I think it's a good and important compromise that we have reached here.